Welcome to anybody who has joined the line since I last spoke. Today, we'll be sharing with you the top 5 things that you can do to improve your CVs and resumes, and we'll be showing you how you can implement these tips in Bullhorn. So my name is Lauren. I'll be presenting a part of today's webinar, as well as keeping an eye on any questions you have during this time. Before we get started, I just want to go through a few housekeeping points. So our webinar today will take around 20 to 25 minutes. We'll have a time for a Q&A at the end. So please feel free to send me over any questions you have during the webinar, and we'll cover those at the end. The whole webinar will be recorded from beginning to end, so don't worry if you need to drop out during the webinar. Everyone who has registered will receive the recording in the next day or so. We do have people joining us from Europe and America, and throughout this webinar, I'll be referring to both CVs and or resumes. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear that CVs and resumes are the same thing. And the last thing before we get started is a quick background on who Kailu are, for anyone who's joining us for the first time or maybe needs a refresher. So Kailu are your recruitment platform experts, and we have over 40 years of experience working with and providing Bullhorn solutions for recruiters. Our goal is to help our clients get more out of Bullhorn, and we do this through Bullhorn implementations and migrations, training and customizations, as well as time-saving products that we've built specifically for Bullhorn, and that are designed to streamline and automate your processes. So we will get started now. Speaking on today's webinar, we have an all Kailu lineup for you. So you have myself, I'm Lauren Miller, and I am Kailu's marketing manager. I'll be covering the importance of your brand when it comes to your CVs and resumes. We also have Jamie Thompson, who is our product delivery manager, who will be sharing some of the top client dislikes we hear of, as well as some of our tips. And last but not least, we have Martin Wishart, who is our team lead for product sales, and who will also be sharing a couple of tips and then showing you how you can put these into practice in Bullhorn. So I'm going to get things started today by talking a bit about how putting your brand front and center can really make a difference when it comes to sharing your CVs. The key thing to keep in mind here is that branding is about more than making things look nice and pretty. Branding isn't just a logo, and it's not just the colors you use. Of course, these do contribute, but ultimately, your brand is made up from the sum of experiences people have with your company. So there's a few brands showing on the screen right now. If you take a look at these brands and think about your own perceptions of them, so Google or Coca-Cola or McDonald's or any of the others showing, and consider whether the perception you have of them is based on their logo or based on the experience you've had with them. Of course, your logo, your font, and your colors make up how your brand looks. But for success, you need to think beyond this and about the experience. And the end experience isn't something you can control. As I mentioned, it's kind of the sum of all of your experiences, and you can only control that to a certain extent. So there's a few things to consider when thinking about branding and how this can have an impact on your CVs and on your overall client relationship. The reason you should care about this is that the impact of presenting a consistent brand across all touchpoints is an average increase in revenue of 33%. That's a kind of cross-industry, cross-brand figure. So average increase in revenue of 33%. And as we're going through this webinar, keep in mind how that figure could be as a result or impact of the relationships you have and the placements that you're making from those relationships. So let's take a look at some of the opportunities that you could either be taking advantage of and maybe already are or are missing out on. If we're thinking about brand recognition, it takes 5 to 7 impressions. So 5 to 7 times for someone to see your logo, for example, for someone to remember your brand. And until then, you're missing out on the opportunity to differentiate yourselves. And how does this apply to recruitment agencies? So every time you send a CV without a logo could be a time that one of your competitors is sending a CV with a logo and building up the brand recognition that you're not and that you're missing out on. Also, every time you send a CV with a logo, consider the placement. Is it the same as the last time you sent a CV? If it's not, then you're likely missing out on that opportunity to build up the recognition. So just by placing it in the same place each time, you're taking advantage of that opportunity to maximize the recognition and become instantly recognizable to clients. So you've added your logo in a consistent place and you've started to build up the recognition of your brand, but it doesn't end there. The next step is brand loyalty. And we know that brand loyalty is not based on the number of interactions, but it's based on the quality of the interaction. And 73% of people say that good quality service contributes to brand trust. So if you want your client to see a company, see a CV coming from your company and think, oh, that's likely to be a good quality candidate. Firstly, you need to get them reading what you send over. If you're sending over CVs that have bad or quirky formatting, or the key information maybe isn't that easy to find, or the font is hard to read, that's going to give you a poor quality interaction. And if that poor quality interaction happens regularly, that's what results in your lower brand loyalty. There's a few easy ways of overcoming this. So simplify your formatting, put your key information front and center, and use clear and standard fonts. Jamie and Martin will kind of go into that in a bit more detail. So we'll follow up on that shortly. But the last thing I wanted to say was once you've got the formula right, so getting the brand recognition and the brand loyalty in place, you want to make it consistent across every recruiter at your agency. So the last piece is, again, on the service you're providing. You want to get your CVs and resumes over to your clients as quickly as possible so that you're ahead of your competitors. But you don't want to compromise the quality of the document you're sending out, as this can be kind of detrimental to the way that clients are perceiving your brand and then as a result of that, your service. Remember that 73% of people say that good quality service contributes to how much they trust a brand, and that a consistent brand generates an average of 33% increase in revenue. So you therefore need to be able to take your new CV format and create a process that can be scaled across your agency to give your clients a consistent and quick experience regardless of the recruiter that is sending it out. So I am now going to pass it over to Jamie and Martin, who'll go through some common CV and resume dislikes, and then also we'll go through their tips for how you can improve your files.
Thanks, Lauren. Jamie here. So yeah, in our dealings with clients, hundreds of clients across the world, the most common dislikes that they tend to mention is simply if they're sent too much information on a CV. There's too much detail to get through. They just want to be able to find the right information quickly. They also, if the information is unclear or difficult to read, so as Lauren spoke about earlier, sort of weird and wonderful fonts and layouts and things, then if that's not clear to the client, then it's going to be difficult to pull the information that they need quickly. And one of the other points that have been raised quite a few times is actual the naming of the files, the naming of the CV file itself going over. So if a candidate sends a CV into you and it's just called My CV, then if you're sending 5 or 6 of those over to a client, if they're all called My CV, then that client is going to have difficulty running through and finding the right one that they want to see. So so these are the main points that are coming up when we speak to clients, and a lot of these can be covered with some of the 5 tips that we have here for you today. So so we're moving into the first tip then. Number 1 is simply use a cover page. Now this, some may see this as being an obvious one, but it can be something that's overlooked. Including a cover page on a CV enables the recipient to quickly find the most relevant information at their glance. So this can be particularly important when the client has to review multiple CVs at any one time. Here we have an example of a candidate CV on the left and a pre-built cover page on the right. And it would take time for the client to review the CV and find the information they require. However, with the use of the cover page, this time can be cut down to a matter of seconds. Different clients may also ask for different information when a CV is submitted. So having a pre-built template allows the recruiter to send information quicker and in a more consistent manner. And ultimately, if you make the client's job easier when reviewing candidates, they're going to come back to you again in the future. So moving on to tip number 2, we have branding. So as Lauren mentioned earlier, consistent, clear branding is vital in building brand recognition of your agency, especially when submitting CVs to clients. Clear branding means the client will immediately recognize a CV submitted by you. And here we can see 3 examples of the exact same document, all with different branding styles. You want to make sure that when your clients are receiving files, they're confident they've come from you, from the same place. And someone receiving these particular documents may have trouble recognizing they've come from the same company. And again, using a pre-built template ensures that the branding and the recipient's experience is kept consistent, regardless if you have 5 or 500 consultants sending out CVs. And coming in at number 3, the third tip we have here is using safe fonts or standard fonts. Now, I'm sure everyone has tales of weird and wonderful CVs they've seen over the years with candidates trying to use the latest fonts to make them stand out. But in reality, the information contained in the CV is far more important than how it looks. So you want to make sure it's instantly readable. With this, and from speaking to hundreds of clients worldwide, we'd recommend using safe or standard fonts. And these are typically Arial, Calibri, or Times New Roman. In the example here, each document contains exactly the same content, only the font is different. And I'm sure you can see that as a client, it would be much easier extracting information from the document on the right-hand side there. And one other point to make is that if a document is sent using a custom font, if the recipient doesn't have that font installed on their computer, they're not going to be able to view the document as the sender had intended. And in that, it may default to a different font and have a negative impact on the overall look of the CV itself. So simple change can make a lot of difference when it comes to fonts there. I'm going to let Martin come in now and pick up the final 2 points that we have here for you today.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you. So Jamie touched on a little bit about how using templates can obviously help bring out consistency across the business. Now, one other aspect of that is, of course, ensuring that you're secure in what you do. So a lot of you may be sending out your terms and conditions maybe as a separate file attachment whilst you're submitting your CVs out to the client. But another fail-safe option for this is, why not have that standard terms and conditions as part of the CV template you create. And another good benefit of having this is, if that CV template is the terms and conditions is part of your CV template, that is then only one template that your consultants would have access to for creating the CV, but also then only one location you as a business need to maintain that terms and conditions that do ultimately get sent out by the consultants to the client. It removes the risk of having the template stored kind of on a desktop and accessible to multiple people at one time, and also removes the risk of the wrong, or I guess invalid, terms and conditions being attached by the consultant. So moving on to the last part, is a common theme you might hear from us here at Kylo is why not just stay in Bullhorn? Bullhorn is your kind of main data source. It's where your candidates live. It's where your jobs live. And by using a tool like the Kylo Awesome Docs product, we can build all of your templates within Bullhorn, meaning that your consultants can stay within there. This removes lots of risk from having multiple candidate CVs stored out with the Bullhorn environment. Everything can then live inside Bullhorn, kind of, especially us over here in the UK and Europe, should hopefully help remove lots of GDPR risk by those files being on multiple different machines across your business. And the last thing here is obviously by staying in Bullhorn and kind of touching back on Jamie's points about templates, is that the CV templates being in Bullhorn, again, like I said in the last point, keeps that consistency and ensures that there is only that one location that your consultants have access to create that template. And I believe the next point is Lauren has a poll for us to run, so I'll let her take the reins once more.
Thank you, Martin. So Martin's going to show you kind of how to bring those points and tips to life. But before we go to doing that, wanted to do a really quick poll at this stage, just so we could get an idea of how many of you on the webinar today are already doing these tips, or how many of you would like to make more of them. So going to launch the poll now. You should get a little pop-up coming up on your screens. If you can just hit the answer that's most relevant to you, I will see what the scores are. So how many of these 5 tips are you currently using as part of your CV and resume creation? Okay, so answers coming in there were 7% are using 0 of the tips, 20% are using 1 to 2 of the tips, 73% were using 3 to 4, and 0 were using all 5. So I'll pass over to Martin now, and he will show you, for the people who aren't using all 5, as to how you can start using these tips yourselves.
Thanks again, Lauren. If you can let me share my screen.
Yep, sure.
Here
There
we
we
go.
go. Yep.
So now we can see hopefully a lovely candidates record open in Bullhorn, which is for the most part where people tend to go when they think about creating a CV for the candidate. However, when you are creating a CV for a candidate, I expect, in the most part, this is because you have a position that you want to present this candidate to. So Awesome Docs gives you the ability to generate your CV from the job record, which kind of brings that process together. So rather than going to the candidate, let's connect the process, let's add those candidates to the job. And from here, we can start creating the CVs that we need for this job with those candidates to then present on to the client. And the other cool thing with the Kylo Awesome Doc product is that when we create a template from the job, it actually gives us access to the fields that connect to the job. So we can pull that data into the template that's relevant to the company, perhaps, the candidate, of course, the job, and the contact you submit them to. So in the scenario that you need to maybe create a client-specific template or anything out with your own style, then you do have the option of having those built out as well. But if we just start going through it, I'll show you how this works. So candidates are on the job, hit the action menu, and we want to choose the CV formatting tool from here. The first thing it's going to do is open up that list of candidates that we have connected to the job record. And we then get presented with a list of our CV templates that we have available once we select the candidate we want to work with. So as you can see here, I do have more than one. So this might be to cover, multiple different brands you have within your business. This might be to help accommodate with different client-specific requirements you have. But the key thing to consider here is that there is no limit to how many templates you can have. So you do have the ability to accommodate for those different scenarios. However, the one that I'm going to work with today is down here at the bottom, quite aptly named, I think. And as soon as we select it, the template then starts to load up in the background, and it will go into Bullhorn and get all the data we have told it to collect. And this now gives you a little bit of an insight into that cover page that we're going to put onto the candidate CV. So kind of connecting all the dots together from the 5 points that we spoke about. This is your cover page. This is showing you the information that we've pulled across, giving you the opportunity to just review it and make sure that nothing is incomplete before we move on to the next step. So down at the bottom, we also then get presented with the candidate CV file that we want to merge into the template. And this candidate does have multiple different files on its record, but we do have the ability to restrict which ones are made visible here using set file types. And up at the top here, we have a couple of other options that we'll talk through as well. And just to connect the dots again on some of the points Jamie raised about file naming, we do then have the ability within the template to essentially hard code a consistent naming convention within your template. And this could be the same across all templates, or if you need to have something slightly different for other templates, brands, again, clients if you require that. But the key is that you can have that determined so that it's automatically done. So we're pulling in Jimmy's name and then the date in which the template is created. We have the option here as well to anonymize the file attachments. So you'll notice at the bottom, I selected this file. So this file may very well have the candidate's name or some personal contact information about them within that file. So the anonymizing tool will actually take a look at the information you have stored in those Bullhorn fields. So the name and the address information, and it will cross-reference that data with the file. And if we find a match, the information will then be removed. Now, the next step from here is, of course, to see this all pulled together. So we have the cover page and the file. Once I press this create button at the top, that is then being embedded into the template that we've built in the background. All of your branding's applied, all of that consistent formatting of the text is applied to it, such as the sizing and the style, and it will then open up into Word. So you have that opportunity to see it and make any, final amendments or changes before you actually save it back to Bullhorn and send it on to the client. So you'll notice here that I am within Word. So this is opening up into your fully functional desktop version of Word, giving you the opportunity to make the changes that you might need to if you need to, maybe add in some personal comments or tidy up some grammar, whatever that may be. You have the opportunity to do that. You'll notice on the cover page here, we've got our branding applied as we do in the subsequent pages. But something we can do if you want is have something slightly different across the footer of the document on the pages following the cover page. So we've got our company information here, but then on the subsequent pages as we go through it, we've got Kylo branding and then the consultant's personal contact information with a little photograph of myself there as well. And then scrolling down to the bottom, we'll notice that we have our standard terms and conditions applied to the end of this template. And to close this all together, despite me being in Word on the desktop and having the ability to kind of make changes and edit this document, we are still connected to Bullhorn. So once I've made my changes and edits within Word, the only next step I have to do is press this save button in Bullhorn here. The save button in Word. We can then close this down. And that then takes that document that we've just created in Word and saves it straight back into Bullhorn. So we've been able to drive the action from within Bullhorn to create the CV that we need using a template, creating that consistent style, go into Word as you probably do today, and then save it straight back into Bullhorn without ever actually leaving. And the other cool thing as well is because we've created this CV from the job record, we'll actually save 2 copies back into Bullhorn for you. So one will go into the Files tab of the job record here, so that you have a record of all files that you've created in relation to this job. So you can see one here, and then we have another one that gets added into the candidates record, because this is of course a candidate file. So that'll get put into the files tab of the candidate as well. So that's how Kylo Awesome Docs can pull all that things together and keep you inside Bullhorn.
Great, thank you very much for that overview. So hopefully you can now see my screen again. And Martin, just if you could run through a little bit else about what Awesome Docs can do for our attendees, that would be great.
Of course I can. So we've kind of been focusing today in this call on creating CVs, of course, and that's the point of today. However, Awesome Docs is not just a kind of one-trick pony, if you want to call it that. Awesome Docs actually gives you the ability to generate documents from any entity within Bullhorn. So that is your CVs, for example, on the job record. But that could also be client terms agreements from your company record, or that could be your contractor or, in fact, candidate contracts from your placement record. The list really does become endless. If you kind of consider Awesome Docs giving you the ability to generate documents using a template from any entity in Bullhorn. And we have the ability then to draw the data directly from those fields to mitigate lots of manual inputting that you might still do today. And the tool itself has actually helped generate just under 900,000 documents from within Bullhorn from the start of its time until today. And hopefully on the screen there as well, you'll notice next to the logo, we also have the DocuSign logo. Because as well as being able to create those documents, we also have the ability to integrate the product with DocuSign. So that it becomes your full end-to-end solution for creating documents and having those signed, giving you the ability to create it, send it out for signature from Bullhorn, and then be sent straight back into Bullhorn without any manual input at all. And we believe it's back to Lauren.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Martin. So we do have a few questions that have come in. If anybody does have any other questions they'd like to send over at this point, please do feel free to pop that into the chat box and send it over to me. I don't think we'll have time to do all of the questions we've got, but we'll try and cover as much of them as we can during the time that we have left. So first one is around Word documents. So I noticed you were editing and saving Word documents. Can I create PDFs? So does this work with PDFs as well, Martin?
Yes, it does. So you'll notice that as you've in the question, I've gone into Word and then saved back a Word document. But when I opened that settings box and showed the anonymizer, there's also another checkbox in there to choose docx or PDF. So you do have the opportunity to make the selection at that point, so that when you finally save the document back into Bullhorn, you can decide if it will be a Word document or a PDF. And to take it a step further, we do now have the facility kind of within, I guess, the builder of the product to make a company-wide decision whether you wanted to default to a PDF or a Word document every time.
Okay, perfect. And then we have a couple around templates. So first one is, how do I set up templates?
I can probably take that one. So yeah, if you're setting up templates, you can have us build them. You can buy them from ourselves, and we'll help build them for you. Or once you're actually using Awesome Docs, and we provide full training on how to use the template builder. So after you've had training, you have the ability yourself to create templates. And we're always on call as well. So if you need some help, or if you need refresher training, or you've got a question on, can I do this for the template, or how do I build this, etc., then you can always get in touch with us, and we're always happy to help. But yeah, you have the full power yourself to build them.
Perfect. Thanks, Jamie. And I think we'll have time for one more question. So last one is again on templates. So I have multiple brands. Can I have different templates for those brands, or how many templates can I have set up as part of this?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I guess I did kind of touch on it briefly in my demo I went through. So I guess technically there is no limit to how many templates you can have. So you can have your different templates built out for your different brands, and maybe some client specific ones if that's a requirement as well. But there is the ability to kind of filter those templates down. So if you've got private labels or departments or different user types within your Bullhorn environment, you can choose to filter them using a combination of all three of those, or saying, these templates are only accessible to people in this department. So you can kind of segment them out across the business as well, so that everyone's not seeing every single template, but the ones that are most relevant to them.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Martin. So I think that is all the questions we have time to cover today. I can see some additional questions coming in as we're answering questions as well. So a few outstanding ones to go through. If we haven't covered your question during this time, we'll reply to you directly on those. And apologies for kind of the shortage of time on today's webinar. So on that note, thank you, Martin, and thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everybody, for attending. You'll soon find the recording in your inbox. You can refer back to anything we've talked about during today's webinar, or you can also forward this link on to your colleagues. If you do have any questions after we drop off of the webinar, then you can always contact us by replying to the email that you'll get the recording from, or via Martin's email here, which is martin.wishart@kylopartners.com, or visit our website, which is kylopartners.com. So yeah, thank you very much all again, and we hope this webinar has been helpful, and hope to see you at our next webinar.